Mother dear, I've just finished mess, and I'm here at the YMCA. How I've missed your tender caress since the day when I marched away. But don't worry, dear, I'm contented here. What is more, I'm feeling fine. Everything's all right, dear, and every night I will drop you a line. You can picture me every evening at the close of the day, writing a little letter in the YMCA. Don't you worry, Mother darling, for while the skies are gray, I can always find a little sunshine in the YMCA.
Ron Smith Enterprises presents episode 9 of Topics in Endurance Sports. I'm your host, Tim. Today is Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. This is a full-length episode. This is not a Dog Days of Podcasting episode. So you Dog Days of Podcasting people may not want to listen to this. It's going to be well over an hour long. It's got 2 parts. The first part will really not be interesting if you're really not into endurance running. I'm guessing it won't be interesting, and that might be almost an hour long. I will say you might want to skip to the end when I talk about my nephew-in-law, Kurt Slattery, and that would be about the last 15 minutes or so. That might be kind of interesting to you, possibly, and I guess I just want to brag up my nephew. He did something really fantastic. So that'll be the last part of the show. Also, for everyone, the full-length episodes are recorded as YouTube videos. It's the exact same show. I just record a video of me doing the podcast and I throw it up on YouTube, and it's for people who don't do podcasts. I have not been putting the Dog Days up there, but I do put my full-length shows up. And now, for those of you who have no idea what the Dog Days is, it is a podcasting challenge where a number of us are trying to do a show a day every day for the month of August. And today's the 8th day. This is actually not the Dog Days episode. There will be a separate one I'll do later in the day. The Dog Days episodes are short compared to these shows, and they're much looser in how I do them. So if you've not been listening to the Dog Days, that's what those are about. You don't need to listen to them, but you can. But they will not be on YouTube. Okay, I hope all of that makes sense. A little bit more about me. You can find information about me at my website at runsmith.net. Email, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and my coaching services. Please check that out. I'm a running coach. So I have a lot to talk about today. Today's topics: Western states before the race and the first 30 miles. First, though, from previous episodes, you just listened to a song called the Yip Yip Yap Hank song. Well, it's from a show called Yip Yip Yank. Yip Yip Yap Hank. It's evidently an old movie or an old show of some sort, and you could hear it was about the YMCA, and I played that because 2 episodes ago in episode 7, I talked about the YMCA. And I should have played that song then, but I came across it later, I guess. Also in episode 7, I asked this question: are there still YWCAs? A dumb question, because I had, even before that show, run by a YWCA in Dayton, Ohio, near where I live. So I'm not sure why I asked that question. So there's at least one YWCA, and I presume many more. Also in that episode, I stumbled over what war Teddy Roosevelt was in. That was, of course, the Spanish-American War. Back in episode 6, I interviewed Amy Costa, who completed the stage race across the desert in Morocco. and the Sahara Desert, and it's a stage race. Marathon des Sables is what it's called. And it was, I think, a really interesting interview because of how well she did in answering all the questions. But I wanted to give another shout out to her because she recently, in July, finished the Badwater 135-mile race through Death Valley, California. It's an extreme race. She came in second place female. That's her best finish to date. And I think if she came in second, obviously if she goes back, she's got a chance to win the thing. So congratulations, Amy Costa. She is one heck of a runner. I also wanted to mention a couple other podcasts. There is a podcast called the Southeastern Trail Runner Podcast. Southeastern Trail Runner Podcast. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it or not. It's relatively new. They're up to about 30 episodes. Of course, they actually do an episode a week, unlike me. I just sometimes do one. It's pretty good. So they're based out of Kentucky, so there's a lot of stuff about racing in Kentucky in the East. And speaking of another one in the East, I have mentioned the East Coast Trail and Ultra podcast. This is pretty funny. I was actually interviewed by them in episode 39. So check it out. Not because I'm so cool, although I guess part of it is I want you to hear me, but because the hosts, Ryan and Sean, were so funny in it, they turned it into pretty much a comedy skit when they interviewed me. So I think it's pretty hilarious. Other people have told me it's pretty hilarious. So check it out. Episode 39 of the East Coast Trail and Ultra podcast. Okay, let's get to today's topic. This is going to be about my race at Western States, and I don't even want to go over Western States. I've talked about it for 8 previous episodes. Listen to previous episodes if you want to know more about the Western States. It's a 100-mile race in California. So I talked in the last episode, I talked about the training runs, which I did over Memorial Day weekend, where they organize runs over the last 70 miles of the course over 3 days. So like 30, 20, and 20. So I already knew what the last 70 miles of the course was like. And so on June 24th, I lined up to try to run the whole 100 miles. It would be the first time I saw the first 30 miles of the course. And the fact that I'm saying that this podcast is about the first 30 miles might give you an indication of what happened to me on that day. But what I want to do, I want this to be useful. Just like the training run podcast and the last one, I'm hoping it's very useful for anyone interested in doing the training runs. So I want this to be useful as well. I want to give you some information about the days right before the race and the day of the race. So this is a huge, huge deal race. This is the Boston Marathon of 100 milers. It is the very first 100 miler ever created in the world, at least the first official one. I'm sure there were instances of people doing longer runs and so forth, but the first official 100-mile race started in the mid-70s and is a gigantic deal. Lots of elites come do this, extremely prestigious and extremely difficult to get in to the race. And it's a lottery, and I got picked. It was a 2.5% chance of getting picked, and I got in. So amazing. So that's why I have wanted to make a big, big, big deal about this race. So because it's such a big deal, it's not a case where you just show up Saturday morning and run. Things start on Thursday. So on Thursday, they had this ceremonial hike up to the top of the first climb. So the race begins in Squaw Valley, California, and you run to Auburn, California, 100 miles of trails. And Squaw Valley is at about 6,000 feet, and the race begins immediately with a hike up to what's called the escarpment, and there's a monument up there called Watson's Monument. I don't know the story behind that, and that's at like 8,300 feet. So that's the first thing you do instantly. It takes about 3 miles or so, something like that, to get up there. So on Thursday, they had some ceremonial hike up to the top of it and some ceremony at the monument. I did not go to that. I really didn't want to, ruin my legs hiking a few miles 2 days, or not even 2 days before the start of the race. So I did not do that. Could have taken a $40 tram ride to the top, but we had already done that a week previous. We had already done that ride just to go look around at the top. So I wasn't going to pay it again. A rather expensive tram ride to the top. So that happened Thursday morning. So I don't know what that's about, but you can do that if you're there. Go to the top and look around and go to whatever the ceremony is. Thursday afternoon, they had some talks. So one talk was a crew talk, and that's for your family and friends and people who are going to take care of you during the race. So my wife was going to be taking care of me, along with my daughter and my daughter's boyfriend, but just my wife and I went to the crew talk. I actually sent my daughter and her boyfriend up the tram so they could go up and look around up there. Cool views, of course, at the top of it's a ski resort, so you're basically taking a ski tram up to the top. So at the crew talk, really, they talked mostly about how to get to certain aid stations if you're not running it. It's, in a sense, easy to go from aid station to aid station if you're running because you just follow the course. But if you're driving, some are basically impossible to get it to unless you want to do a big long hike. Others, it's a little more involved. But we decided that she would go to 2 aid stations on the course. The first one's Robinson Flat. That's at mile 30. And even to get to that, you have to drive up this long road, park your car, and then you get on a bus and they shuttle you to that. So this is all the crew people. You have to get shuttled the last mile or so to the aid station at Robinson Flat. But that's pretty easy to do. So we knew she would go there, and then she was also going to meet me at Forest Hill, which is mile 62. That's the one kind of city you go through. It's not a big city, but it is a city, and you actually run on streets for a few blocks in Forest Hill. It's probably the easiest place in the course to get to. So our goal was that my wife would be there at the beginning, and then she would see me at Robinson Flat, mile 30, Forest Hill, mile 62, and then at the finish. My daughter and her boyfriend would not be at the start, but they would meet me at the other places. So that's what we learned at the crew talk. There were a couple more talks. One was about medical research. They always do research at the Western states, and I forget what the other talk was. So you can go to those talks on Thursday. That ends Thursday. I got some more pictures. So in the last episode, you heard me talking about all the famous people I got pictures with. So I got some more pictures on Thursday. I got my picture with Camille Herron. She just won Comrades. Fantastic runner, great marathoner. And I got my picture taken with her. She was the first American to win Comrades since 1997. That is a 55-ish mile road ultra in South Africa. And the first American woman to win since 1997. So she's amazing. And also got my picture taken with Michael Wardian. All ultra runners know about him. He is kind of hard not to call him a freak, but because of the frequency of racing he can do. For example, he just did a challenge called the 777 Challenge, where he ran 7 marathons in 7 continents in 7 days. It's a real logistical thing to do, just trying to figure all that out. But he, of course, broke the overall record. He ran each one of them in around 2 hours and 50 minutes. And very difficult considering you have to fly from place to place, and your time zones are all messed up. So you're getting pretty much no sleep, and some of the runs are probably what amounts to 2 a.m. your own time. And he does things like he'll run a 100-miler on Saturday, then he'll run a marathon on Sunday, and crazy stuff like this. All types of amazing things he does. So I got my picture taken with them. Also, Eo Wang, got my picture taken with her. And she is an up-and-coming runner, very young and very, very fast, and was predicted to be podium material here at Western States. So that was Thursday. On Friday, we went back to Squaw Valley. All of the stuff on Thursday started at the start-finish in Squaw Valley. Friday, we went back there for packet pickup, or basically check-in. And we get there in the morning, and there's a long line for the check-in. And when we get to the front of the line, we actually got interviewed. I never had this before. So the little interview was kind of also some research. They asked me what shoes I wore, how many times I'd run 100-milers, stuff like that. Then we got our picture taken. You don't usually have that happen in a race, but they took every single person's picture, sat us in a chair, took our picture. And then we got our bag of junk, right? And I have to say, it was pretty disappointing. And I'm not the only person who said this. I kind of talked to some other people, and they all said that the stuff we got was not very impressive. So we got a gray technical shirt with the little tiny letters that say Western States. Not very pretty. We got an incredibly ugly hat. I mean, ridiculous. Bright green. And even as kind of a funny, ugly hat, it doesn't work. It's just ridiculous. I haven't worn it since. I think I wore it the next day for a few minutes, or a couple days later for a few minutes, but it's just ridiculous looking. I can't even think of where it is at the moment. We got a little buff. That's okay. One of these little neck things. We got some gaiters. Those are useful. I'm happy with those. They're not beautiful. They're just gray, and they say Western States. We got a pair of Dry Max socks. Those are nice. Nothing fancy about them, but they're nice. And they got little letters that say Western States. So that was good. But none of this stuff was really awesomely cool. And my theory is that it's because they have a Western States store. I mean, most races don't have a store. They have a little store that goes with it that sells a whole bunch of really cool looking apparel. So I'm thinking, if they don't give you anything interesting, then you're going to go buy some shirts that look actually quite nice. And I did buy something. I bought a hat that has actually, it's right next to me. Okay, I have it for the people on the camera can see it. Maybe I'll post a picture of it as well. I have a hat that has a little thing that hangs in back over your neck. It's really nice. So I got the hat, and it does say Western States on it. And I got that for like $20. And I got that because it's just so useful. I did not have one of those. I've always wanted one. And I actually wore it in the race. They always say don't try anything new on race day, but I knew it was going to work. So, and it did. It was fine. So I got that. I was happy with that. Got some more pictures. So the first picture I got was Gordy Ainsleigh. All you ultra runners know of him. He is the guy who invented the 100-mile race. So the story is, you've all heard it a million times, you ultra runners, but the story is in the early 70s, there was a 100-mile horse race on this course, and there still is. It still exists. In fact, that just happened a couple of weeks ago. A 100-mile horse race. Gordy was going to race it, but his horse came up lame, so he ran it. And thus, the beginning of 100-mile races. So he is an absolute legend in the sport of ultra running. He began all 100-mile races by running it. He finished it in under 24 hours. And within a couple of years, and people then started doing that afterwards, and within, I don't know how many, just a few years, it officially became the Western States 100-mile endurance run. So he invented it. He's about 72 or 73 now. He's considered to be quite a wild character, a very interesting character, and I got my picture taken with him. I got my picture taken with Nikki Kimball. She's a multi-winner of Western States. Actually, she put my little wristband on. She was volunteering. Everyone got a wristband. I got my picture taken with Jim Walmsley. He's an up-and-coming superstar, only been on the radar for a few years, and it crushes everything. He's won every single race he's won, except last year he was leading Western States under course record pace and one off course at mile 93. It is now a very famous incident in the history of ultra running. And he was predicted to destroy everyone in this year's race as well, because every race he does, he not only wins, he breaks the course record. Amazingly fast. Got my picture taken with Gunhild Swanson. She became famous 2 years ago when she finished the race with only 6 seconds to go. You have to finish Western States in 30 hours. She did it in 29:59:54, and she was 70 years old at the time. Absolutely astounding. Got my picture taken with her. She was back to try it again at the age of 72. Finally, I got my picture taken with John Feggy Veresi. He is a great runner. He has finished the Barkley Marathons. That's all I need to tell you. If you don't know what that is, Google Barkley Marathons. There's even a Netflix movie about it. He finished it. He's amazing. But there's quite a story that goes with this. So Western States allows 369 runners. There's a historical reason for that. So what they did this year was they had a waiting list. So they let in 369, and then over the months, since they let that many people in, if someone dropped out, the next person on the waiting list would go. John was the 39th person on the waiting list, and 38 people had dropped out. So John was the next one. You were allowed to get into the race up until 1 p.m. on Friday. The race was starting Saturday morning, but if someone were to drop out Friday at 12:30 in the afternoon, John could get in. So he actually flew all the way to the race he lives in like Vermont or Connecticut or something. He flew there and he's just standing there ready to go. He's literally standing near the race director, wondering if someone doesn't show up or something like that. He is ready to go. And can you imagine that? He did all that training, everything, just hoping and hoping and hoping someone doesn't show up race day. Well, it turns out, the way I understand it, everyone did show up. And John was evidently still kind of hanging around there, even though 369 people had checked in. But then, who should walk up but Gordy Ainsleigh, the guy who invented the 100-miler. He walked up to the race director and he said, I'm not sure I'm going to run it. I'm not sure I'm feeling up to it. I mean, he is in his 70s. I'm not sure I'm feeling up to it. I think I might start the race and run up the first climb and then decide. And the race director looked at him and said, Gordy, John over here, who was evidently literally within hearing distance of this, John over here would like to run. If you give up your spot now, John can run. If you start tomorrow morning, he cannot run. I mean, he's just out. All he can do is go watch the race. And so Gordy, after thinking about it a while, right at about noon, gave up his spot, and John got in the race. So it was pretty nice on Gordy's part. I mean, he was allowed to run it, but he's run it obviously many, many, many times, finished it many times, but still that was a heck of a thing to do. And after the pickup, there was a race meeting for everyone to go to, and that's where the race director relayed this story, and they introduced John, and he waved his hand, but you could see he was sitting there crying. He was so emotional about it, and it was really a cool moment. I mean, everybody was kind of like choked back, tears, just because it was just so cool. I don't know, maybe it doesn't seem like it would be, but John was really overcome with emotion, so it was really neat, and good job, Gordy, for doing that. And I got my picture taken with John, and he did finish the race. He did very well. I'll try to post pictures of these people on the website, runsmith.net, and I've got course pictures and stuff like that I'll try to post as well. So, like I said, there was a race meeting. I don't even remember all the details. We went over the race and, what the condition of the course was in, which is going to be a big deal, and whatever important details about the race. I don't think I learned tons that I didn't need to know. Other than up until then, I guess we weren't positive. Well, we did know we were going to run the normal course. I'll get to that. So that was it for Friday. After that, we went to a hotel we had in Tahoe City, which is about 15 minutes from the start of the race, right on Lake Tahoe. Got a hotel that was not that great and extremely expensive, ridiculous, stupidly expensive, like $180 for this, what amounts to a Motel 6. That should be $60. For dinner, I just had a Subway sandwich. I'm not really particular about what I eat for dinner. And we got some frozen yogurt. That was all I ate. So, race morning, Saturday, June 24th. I was up at 2:45 a.m. I had my traditional oatmeal and blueberry banana baby food. Yes, it's that like toddler baby food that comes in a packet. Blueberry banana mixture. I like that. So just a few hundred calories worth. I think I might have eaten a Cliff Bar on the way to the race too. So we drove to the race. My wife and I were there by about 4 o'clock. Then we picked up our bib and our chip. We got 2 chips actually, a chip to go in your shoe and a chip in your bib. And they knew people would probably change their shoes and lose the shoe chip, and they said that was okay. It was kind of like a backup. So you just had to have your bib because it had a chip in it as well. So I got that, and I had it, I was all ready to go, went to the bathroom, made sure I had my water with me. In line, I saw a guy named Eric Strand, who I knew from Facebook. Eric Strand. and he took some videos of the race. So that's why I bring his name up. You might have seen them, or maybe you might want to look for his videos, Eric Strand. And he took a little video of me, so I have a little cameo in his little movie he made where I say, hey, let's go rock and roll, or whatever, I don't know. But that was kind of fun. And I gave my wife a kiss, goodbye, and at 5 a.m. we started the race. And crossed the starting line. I waved to my wife again, and we all ran about 30 yards, and then we all stopped and walked because it's flat for 30 yards before you start making that climb. Actually, I'm assuming the guys in front were actually still running, but the masses were walking. So then we had this long walk uphill. For I don't know how long I walked. I should have looked it up, but surely it was well over an hour. We walked up to the top of the escarpment up there, well above 8,000 feet. And at the start of the race, I felt fantastic. I was calm, relaxed. All the legs felt good. I mean, it seemed like it was going to be a great day, or at least a chance for a great day. So, of course, my plan was to, I'm going to say I was going to really take it easy the first 30 miles. But in truth, I have to take it easy for 100 miles. I mean, there's no way I can be pushing at any real point, or I'm never going to make it, especially at the beginning, because I know no matter what, the last 50 miles, I'm going to be going all out in a sense just to finish the race. So you can't go out hard at all. You got to stay within yourself. So as I'm going up the hill, I'm taking pictures and just relaxing. I'm probably about 3/4 back. About a quarter of the runners are still behind me, but I'm, just taking it easy. And got to the top of the escarpment about mile 3. Like I said, 8,300 feet. I even stopped and took a little video up there. And the hike up is pretty awesome because you're looking back down on Squaw Valley as the sun is coming up. Quite beautiful. There was some fog, so it gave it kind of a neat look. And you get to the top and the sun's coming up and all that. It's really, really neat to do. And so I was feeling great. I had like 96, 97 miles to go, but I was feeling pretty darn good. And then we start running. Oh, about halfway up to the top, we hit the snow. So again, if you did not know this, there was a ton of snow and rain in California this past winter. I don't know how anybody could not know that, at least anyone in the United States. I mean, ridiculous amounts, which is why we thought maybe they were going to alter the course. They've had to do that before because the high country, as they call the first 30 miles, was going to be so buried under snow. They did not alter the course, and I think some people thought they should have maybe, but we didn't even know that until I think 2 or 3 days before the race is when they finally announced we would do the regular course. So we're not going to take any detours around it this year. They have altered it a number of times in the past, but not this year. So about halfway up the hike, we hit the snow. And that really wasn't too bad. That snow was not really a problem to walk on. We're just walking anyway. Yeah, it slowed the hiking down some. And partly because everyone kind of made this groove. We all had to walk in kind of the same spot. And, you couldn't spread out at all. But, it slowed us down some, but I don't think it made a gigantic difference. We get to the very top and we start running. And right at first, there was no snow when we start running. Of course, now we're at the very highest point in the race, 8,300 feet or whatever. We're going to end in Auburn at whatever it is, 3,000 feet, with a whole bunch of ups and downs in between. And so we start running down, and you spend about, like I said, the first 30 miles, most of it at around 7,000 feet, roughly. A lot of up and down, but you're roughly at 7,000 feet. No gigantic canyons, but lots of little ups and downs. So we start running down. At first, it's dirt. So the first thing I notice is very, very, very rocky, very technical. For someone like me, I'm not a great technical runner, and it was quite technical, rocky. This is the most technical part of the course. I had been told that, and it does seem that was the case. The thing is, and here's where things start to get a little glum, the snow came back quite quickly. And it turns out for up until mile 16, 17, somewhere in there, we were either running on snow or in deep mud or in creeks. These should have been trails, but it was the snow melting because it was a very hot week. So snow was melting rapidly, but there were tons of the snow. So it either melted onto a flat area and then it was thick mud, or it was melting down the side of a hill and we were running in a stream. Often a stream with boulders in it the size of like baseballs or softballs. You're running up and down streams like this or crossing streams like this. And it was very, very, very difficult. If you've listened to other podcasts, you already know this. It was really, really something. And so often you're running kind of on the side of the mountain. You know, it's sloping down to your left, and you're running and you're just sliding down to the left. And there's, again, other podcasts, a lot of people go through a lot of descriptions about this. You're just sliding down to the left, falling. I fell at least 10 times, I'm sure. If you're running like down the snow, a little steep downhill, we were often just getting on our butts and sliding down. Trying to go up, you'd be going up sometimes and then sliding back down, sliding to your left, sliding this way or that way, using a ton of energy, and this is key, a ton of energy and a ton of leg muscle, not to go forward, but to try to stand up and try to not slide sideways. So you're bracing, often my left leg, because we were sliding that way, I'm bracing it really, really hard with every step to try to not fall down to my left. And then you would come out of the snow patch, and you just go from patch to patch to patch, come out of the snow patch into these mud fields. And there was one that was gigantic. It had to be like half of a football field, wide and in length. There was no way to go around it. Just deep, deep mud, trying to suck your shoe off. Luckily, I had my shoes on tight, but I know some people did lose their shoes, came off completely, and had to dig them out. And it's just trying to pull your shoes out of there. Every step you're fighting to get the foot out, and you're trying not to fall at the same time. And then you get out of that, and then you're running through a creek, which, you know, it feels good actually in a way, cold water, but it got to a point where my feet were frozen after a while, very cold. Temperature-wise, it was fine. It was really nice up there. It was fantastic, I thought. Hey guys, butting into my own podcast here, to let you know that poles and shoe modifications were not allowed. You cannot use trekking poles, and you could not wear micro spikes or anything like that. And you might also be wondering if people who wore more aggressive shoes did better. From what I can tell, that made almost no difference. I did not hear anyone say that their shoes helped them get over the snow and through the mud. And with the mud, it's pretty obvious, because if your foot is in the mud up to the ankle, I don't really think it matters anymore what type of lugs you have. I would think that maybe some super aggressive soles could help with the snow, but nobody was saying that. Every person who I listened to on a podcast or whose blog I read said that they were slipping and sliding all over the place. So there you go on that. I just want to let everyone know, because you might be thinking that smart people were using poles or had especially good shoes or were using micro spikes. Okay, back to the episode. Anyway, that describes about the first 17 miles. So I got to the first aid station called Lion Ridge about mile 10. And at that point, I'm behind schedule. So there are two different schedules. There's an unofficial schedule they publish that you want to stay on if you want to finish in 30 hours. They have that, and that's the only one I'm paying attention to. There is another cutoff schedule that's even slower, where if you're not there at that time, you're out of the race, because you can't have volunteers there forever. So that's about an hour slower than this 30-hour schedule. Eventually, they jive together, but at first it was about an hour slower. And I didn't even know what that schedule was, because I thought there's no way I'd be that slow. But when I got to the first aid station, mile 10, I was 30 minutes behind the 30-hour schedule, which means I was on track to finish on 30 hours and 30 minutes. Not good. All right, that means I would not finish the race. It turns out a whole bunch of people said they were behind by about this much. I mean, behind their plan. Even though a lot of the elite runners, the guy who won the race, he said he was like 30 to 45 minutes behind his plan already at that point. I kind of wish I had known that. It might have made me feel a little better. I don't think it would have made a big difference, but it might have made me feel better. And there were a lot of people behind me, but I'm just worrying about myself. And I'm thinking, oh my, I'm already behind. That was aid station 10. We still had a bunch more horrible muck to get to aid station 16. And that was, what was that? Red Star Ridge at aid station about 16-ish. Again, I was only about 30 minutes behind, so at least I was keeping even. I was kind of happy about that. And it took me 4 hours and 40 minutes to get there. And I think the 30-hour schedule said you needed to be there about 4:10. But at this point, the snow and the mud was about to end. Either had just ended or it was about to end. So I thought, okay, now it's time to start making time up. Except for one problem. This is my big problem in races. If I have one nemesis, if I have one thing that comes to get me, it's cramping. That's my biggest problem. I mean, I get all types of little problems too, but if anything is going to make my day really, really bad, it's cramping. And I had started cramping even before hour 4. I had already starting some small cramping, feeling the twinges, and that is really a bad, bad, bad sign. When I have to be out there for 30 hours and by hour 4, I'm already starting to feel the cramps, that is not good. I cramp a lot, but this was extremely unexpected because usually in slower runs like this, I can put off the cramping because the intensity is lower. But I was already starting to cramp, so I was a little nervous about this. And so when I left Red Star Ridge at mile 16, I knew I needed to push it a little bit more to slowly start getting the time back that I had lost. So I ran about a quarter of a mile down the trail and I completely seized up, absolutely seized up. And when I cramp severely, it is really bad. So we're talking both quads. And when I don't just cramp in one spot, when I go bad, everything can start cramping. So both quads, both hamstrings, the insides of my legs, all of it is cramping all simultaneously and all very, very deep cramps. And when that happens, you can't do anything. You can't try to stretch something out because it just makes another part worse. It's really hard to even shuffle. It's hard to do anything. So usually I will stand absolutely still and try to relax. Even though I'm in excruciating pain, I have to try to use my mind to try to relax my legs as best as I can. This usually doesn't work really great, but it's the only thing I can do. So I did that. And from then on, it was just a game of fighting the cramps. That's all I can say. It was just fighting cramps. So, for example, if I was running on flats, it got to the point where I could maybe run 100 meters, 200 meters, and then the cramping would just build back up again. So I'd have to start walking. Going downhills were really, really difficult because of just, the natural braking motion with your quads going downhill. I was walking downhills at points because I just could not run downhill. And that's really bad because that's when you want to try to make up some time. And it was still rocky up there. And the more I have to bounce around like that, the worse it is. I could go uphill pretty well. I could hike uphill fine, but you're naturally going slow doing that anyway. So it really didn't bother me going uphill, hiking uphill. For some reason, that was okay. But anyway, it was all pretty bad. The next aid station was about mile 24.5 called Duncan Canyon, and that is partway down the first canyon of the race. It's one of the smaller canyons, but it's still not nothing. And I remember running down into there in a lot of pain, trying to run, but doing a lot of walking. And by the time I got out of there, I was only 5 minutes from the ultimate cutoff. I was 45 minutes or so behind the 30-hour schedule. And like I said, I didn't even know the actual cutoffs, race cutoffs. And I asked someone, they said, well, you're 5 minutes from being kicked out of the race. Honestly, right there, I knew I had already known, to be honest. I know my history. But about right there, I kind of knew this day was not going to end in Auburn. But I kept going, and it just never got better. I went down the rest of the canyon, very difficult. I remember people still passing me. Then it was quite a long uphill overall. And again, I was hiking and passing people going uphill, passing. But then every time I hit a flat stretch, I couldn't run to really gain more time on the schedule. I couldn't do it. The little downhills I couldn't do, and so I just couldn't get anything going. So the next aid station was Robinson Flat. That's where my wife, daughter, and a boyfriend would be. And I pulled into there, and I missed the cutoff by 7 minutes. So my day was done. And I didn't know the exact cutoffs, but I was thinking Robinson Flat was 9 hours and 15 minutes. That's what was in my head. It took me 9 hours and 7, and the cutoff was 9 hours. So again, I didn't have that in my mind because I didn't think I'd be that close to the cutoffs in just 30 miles. So that was the end of my day right there. So as you can imagine, I was pretty darn bummed, although I kind of knew what was coming. I even though I didn't exactly know the cutoff, I had a feeling I was going to miss it. So, I didn't start crying or anything like that. I wasn't morbid, but, I came in, I said, "Oh, sorry guys, just not my day." Told them I was cramping, and, I looked fine. I felt fine in a sense, except for my legs, the cramping, but that was it. So I did 30.3 miles in 9 hours and 7 minutes. That's an 18:03 pace. And the pace you need to finish the whole race is 17:58. So as you can see, I wasn't horribly behind the race pace that I needed. I was just a few minutes behind this particular cutoff. And it's obviously a bad sign if you're fighting the cutoffs that much at mile 30. You're not going to be speeding up, later in the race to finish the race. Not likely anyway, especially what's coming next is a bunch of canyons. So that was my race. So as far as the cramping goes, I know a bunch of you listening are experts, and you're all saying, "Hey, did you take some salts?" Because that's what everybody says. Did you hydrate? That's what everybody says. I could go on a lot about cramping, and maybe I'll do an episode about it, but I know a lot about cramping, okay? And no, it was not salts. It was not hydration. And I can tell you right now, research shows that stuff makes very little difference, and that is also what experience has taught me. And I know you're saying, I take a salt tablet and it goes away. Well, A, that's a placebo. Or B, it is when you take the salt tablet, you do something else. You slow down as well or something like that. Salt really makes no real difference in cramping. But again, a lot of people think it does. And if it works for you, that's great. Keep doing it. And guess what? I took salt tablets too, just in case. I was out there taking salt tablets and making sure I was hydrated and all this. I was trying. There is some research that says pickle juice actually has something behind it. It's a nervous system phenomenon where it can help with cramping. And so from that, there's a company that makes something called Hot Shot. It's supposed to work very similar. I had Hot Shots with me, and I took one at hour 4 and one at hour 6.5. But that's all I had were those two. And honestly, even those didn't make a big difference for me. There's something about me. I am a super cramper. I am an extra cramper. I don't know what it is, and I know what caused it. What caused it was all the effort in the snow and the mud, because things like that will trigger cramping. If I can run smoothly, I tend not to cramp. But when I have to start fighting like that, that will trigger cramps. For example, often when I trip, I can be running along and feeling okay. Then I will just hit a rock and trip a little bit. And I don't even have to fall, but just catching myself, boom, it'll trigger a cramp. And when I cramp really, really, really bad. I don't get like cramp and, it just goes away. Almost never happens. And the cramping, just an example of how severe it was. I can remember this. At one point, my right leg was a little worse than my left, partly because I have a left knee thing going on, and I think that tends to favor my right leg ever so slightly. And also, as I said, running in the snow, we kept sliding to the left. So I kept having to use my left leg to stabilize myself. And so I guess that would make the left leg worse, wouldn't it? It's kind of interesting. But anyway, I was using the left leg a lot for that. I think maybe because I was doing that, then later I was starting to use the right leg to run more, a lot more energy in my right leg to run. But anyway, for whatever reason, my right leg was a little bit worse. And I can remember at one point running, and I was just swinging the right leg, like as though it was paralyzed. I was swinging. So I'd take a normal step with my left leg, swing the right leg. And you can do that for maybe a quarter mile, a half mile or something, maybe 20 minutes to end a race. I was trying to run with cramps for over 5 hours, 5 straight hours of cramping. Maybe not every minute, but I might go a few minutes without cramping, and then they'd start to build up, and then I might have severe cramping. I'd have to stop, and just repeating that for 5 straight hours. And just that's the way it is sometimes. So the race ended right there. I hung out for a little bit, drank some stuff. And my wife, who's so amazing, she knows I like Diet Coke, and she actually brought a Diet Coke up there in a little cooler for me. It was like the sweetest thing in the world. I probably wouldn't have drunk it because I actually would drink a regular Coke. That's the only time I ever drink, regular soda. But it was so sweet of her to do this. And in this case, it was great because on the little bus ride back to her car, I got to drink the Diet Coke she brought me. Very nice. And, my daughter was there. And so I joked to my daughter, well, I guess you're going to have to be the one in the family to do Western States now. But she's recently started running again. She's up to a few miles, but, who knows? Maybe she's only 22, maybe she'll become a great runner or become a runner, ultra runner someday. Not likely, but you never know, right? So we went back, got in her car, drove to Forest Hill where I had a drop bag. And to give you an idea how incredible the front runners are, some of the front runners are going through. I think I saw probably the 5th through the 10th guys, roughly, when I was picking up my drop bag. I mean, they're at mile 62, and I had just dropped at mile 30. And this is maybe an hour after I dropped by the time we got to Forest Hill, and there they are going through. So they were at Forest Hill, mile 62 in like 10 hours or something. Unbelievable. So then we went to Auburn to eat, and I'm trying to act not too bummed, and being a little self-deprecating, but trying to be cool about it. I got my family with me. I don't want to be all mopey around them, but I'm sure I was trying not to be. Still very sore, not really from running 30 miles, but from the cramping. My cramps are so severe, it's like they cause injury. It's like I think the cramping alone tears some muscles. I know it does. It tears muscles. Tears muscle fibers. I have no doubt that it does that. It's so severe. And even on the drive back, I had to yell at one point to stop the car so I could get out of the car to just try to relax because I was cramping again. So it was something. And then we went ahead, and I'm thinking I don't need to be a sore loser. So we drove to the finish. This was not easy. The finish is at Auburn at the high school track. It's really neat because the runners run onto the track. They do 3/4 of a lap on the track and then go through the finish line. So we were there with other people waiting for the lead men to come through. We had a lot of time from the time I dropped until now. So we were there a couple hours early, and the Western States store was over there. So, of course, I didn't want to buy anything because had I finished, I probably would have went and bought another shirt or something cool, but I wasn't about to buy anything else because I didn't finish. So it's kind of a bummer to look at that. It was pretty bittersweet to be on the track there. It was cool, but I knew I wasn't going to make it. But it was neat to see Ryan Sands, the winner, come through. I think we saw Alex Nichols come through, and maybe a few others, and then we did leave after that, but it was really cool to see them finish. I mean, unbelievable. 16 hours and 19 minutes for Ryan Sands. Under those conditions, not only was there the first 30 miles of crud, but it was one of the hottest Western States ever. So really something. I wish I would have stayed to watch the women. I wish I could have. They weren't going to come for another 3 hours or something, and I didn't I wasn't going to keep my family up for that, and I was tired, and I just couldn't sit there for another 3 hours. So that was it. Went home, went to sleep. Next day, I again decided not to be a sore loser, and we went to the little awards ceremony. So the race ended at 11 a.m. I was not about to go there right before that and see the last finishers, because that would have been too much of a bummer. But the awards were at like 12:30, so we did go to the awards, saw them present the top 10 male and female winners, and then after that, they started giving a medal to every single person who finished, and I really couldn't watch that. I kind of walked away from that because that bummed me out. But I did get more pictures. So here's the final set of pictures. I got my picture with Kat Bradley, the female winner of the race, very young runner, or a new runner who's kind of come out of nowhere in the last couple of years. Amazing. Got my picture taken with the great Ryan Sands, the guy who won. He's from South Africa. He's pretty much a legend in the general sport of ultra running, one of the greatest ultra runners. Chris Danucci, I think he came in 5th. I got my picture taken with him. Alex Nichols, the guy who came in 2nd. And Stephanie Case, who did it in under 24 hours, but she's a pretty wonderful person, kind of a do-gooder type. She's a lawyer and works, I think, for NGOs or something, has traveled the world doing all types of nice things. Like, for example, she's got an organization to promote women's running in Afghanistan. So that'll give you an idea of her. So you might want to look up Stephanie Case and donate to that organization. After that, we went to In-N-Out Burger. That was our first trip to In-N-Out Burger in California, which I guess is kind of an institution there. And I got a triple cheeseburger. It was pretty good. Enjoyed that. And that's it. That's the end of the story right there as far as Western States goes. So I hope that gives you a little more information about the first 30 miles, which you can then put in with the last 70 miles and get some general overview of the race. A few other things. I really, really want to sit here and whine about how hard the first 30 miles was and how hard the race was this year. So I'm going to do it a little bit. I can prove to you how hard it was in one way, and that is they have calculated the average finishing time of the last 30 or 40 years or something. This was the 4th slowest one. So by that argument, you can say it's the 4th hardest Western States. And in fact, it may be the 2nd, because there were 2 years where they gave all the runners extra time. I don't know why they did it those 2 years and why they didn't this year. I guess the snow was even worse. I don't know. But a couple of years, they gave the runners 32 hours. So that artificially raises the average finish time. So if you throw those 2 years out, this was the 2nd hardest Western States ever. I can also talk about the winning times. 16:19 for Ryan Sands. The course record is 14:46. Ryan Sands himself has run it in 15:03. So this is an hour and 20 minutes slower than his best time. So that tells you something right there. A whole bunch of other runners ran far behind their general running abilities as far as time goes. I can quote people I've listened to on podcasts, elite runners and regular runners alike, who had said, oh, this was so hard. For example, Ian Sharman has run it 8 times in a row and said this was the hardest of all 8. Camille Herron, the great Comrades winner, I passed her at the very first aid station. So here was one of the best runners on earth. She made it 10 miles. She had evidently fallen so many times she pulled a hamstring, and I'm sure she could have kept going way faster than me, maybe even fast enough to win fast enough to finish the race, but she was just being smart. But nevertheless, we have elites not making it as well. The 2 people predicted to win, Jim Walmsley, Casey Lichtide, neither one won, and both had a miserable day. Jim Walmsley ended up pulling out at mile 78 with stomach issues. Casey amazingly did finish, absolutely fantastic. She gutted it out, but she was also having, I think, just whole body issues, GI issues, but her brain was all having problems and everything else. She did finish. A whole bunch of elites, had lousy days or dropped out. Eo Wang was leading the race. She ended up dropping out with issues, and a number of other runners just had all types of problems. So again, I really, it's like a big, you know how it is. And when you don't do well, you want to make excuses, right? Here's the problem with all this. A whole bunch of people did finish. About 2/3 of the runners did make it. A third dropped, roughly. 2/3 made it. There's probably someone who got a PR. Probably some people who weren't in as good a shape as I did, but they made it. Or maybe some other people just trained better than I did. I have to face up to that fact. I can't just say, oh, it was all Mother Nature's fault. I have to admit part of it was my own fault. Most likely, cramping. I haven't solved the cramping issue, but I have to admit, I can't just blame it all on the course. Some emotional responses. So I bring this up in case some of you deal with this as well. These are the initial emotional responses, kind of like, what are the 7 stages of grieving? It's a little bit like this, but it's the 3 stages of a DNF. Not really stages, they were all happening at once. Maybe they were stages, actually. The first stage was, I suck. I did everything wrong and I should just quit. I'm horrible at this. At the very least, I need to just give up 100 milers. I've tried 3. I've finished 2 of them, but they were easier. So maybe I just quit this 100-mile business, stick to marathons or 50Ks or something. That's my response number 1, emotional response. Number 2 was, well, who cares? It's not a big deal. Laugh it off. I had fun. I had a great time. I did the training runs. I did the 30 miles of a race. I had a great time in California. Doesn't really matter. Not a big deal. Number 3 is, hey man, I did everything right. This isn't my fault. It's just bad luck. Don't blame me because the first 30 miles were so miserable. It's not my fault. All right. So as far as then evaluating these 3 responses, number 1, that I suck, it was really not helped by listening to podcasts and reading race reports and all this stuff. Yes, they talked about how hard it was, but then there were the descriptions of those who made it. And these are all actual quotes, okay? I heard on podcasts and such. These are people who did finish the race, about people who finished. They learned to suffer. They had grit. They had determination. They were smart. Their plan was well executed. They were tough as nails. They were going to get it done no matter what. And one person who I got my picture taken with over all this time said, I have such respect for those who finished. And this is from a person who also finished. So if that person has such respect for those who finished, what does sorry, I gave it away. It's one of the women. What does she think of me? All right, I guess she doesn't respect me. I guess I don't have grit. I don't have determination. I did not have a well-executed plan. I'm not smart. I'm not tough as nails. So, that makes me really feel like I suck, right? I'm just a loser, right? And I understand all the people who said these things, they didn't really mean that about me. Some of these people have had DNFs of their own, so they're just trying to compliment the people who did make it. But you still get that feeling like, well, I guess I don't exhibit any of these traits, right? So that's kind of hard to overcome sometimes. Number 2, I said, who cares? No big deal. Well, I do care. I will kind of maybe wish I didn't. I could laugh it off completely, but it does gnaw at me a little bit. I'm not going to kill myself over it or anything like that. But yeah, it bugs me that it wouldn't have been so bad if I got to Forest Hill, mile 62 or mile 78. At least I don't think it would be so bad. But mile 30, I mean, man, I barely got started in the race. So I can't say I don't care. The third option, where I just kind of don't blame myself and say it's bad luck, oddly enough, that is kind of mostly the way I feel. I'm the back of the pack runner. I really did a lot right. And if it were not for all that snow and mud, I have no doubt, 100% sure I would have easily gotten through Robinson Flat. How much farther I would have gotten, I don't know, but I would have made it much farther than Robinson Flat. Absolutely know it. So, I don't want to take all the blame off myself, but really a whole bunch went right. My training was the best training I ever had. Other than cramping, I had no issues. I did not have altitude issues, and some did. Up there at 8,000 to 7,000 feet, you can have altitude issues. It's not super high. It's high enough. And some people were having problems. Some people were fighting the heat. I had no heat issues. And we didn't hit the worst part of the day, but there were people who said they were having issues with the heat in the first 30 miles. I didn't. I had no foot problems. I know I heard people saying by Robinson Flat, their feet were blistered. My feet were okay. I didn't have any injuries other than the cramping. My nutrition was fine. My stomach was fine. So really, practically everything went correctly except for the cramping. By the way, I forgot to mention, my right foot was cramping. I've never had that. And the whole foot would like contract really, really, really hard, which really made it difficult to even set it back down on the ground. That was fun. So there was all that going on. So, what can you do? It was just one of those days. So the most reasonable way to really evaluate, the most reasonable response is to objectively evaluate. And it did take me a good month to sit down and do this. So again, it's what we all should probably do when we have something major like this go wrong, is sit and think about it. And the question is, if I went back to Western States, what would I do differently? Which begs another question. Do I want to go back? And you might all say, well, sure you do. But for those of you who know about Western States, and as I've already mentioned, it's very difficult to get in. And if I want to go back, it's probably a 5, 6, maybe 7-year process. I was extremely lucky to get in on one ticket. My first year that I put into the lottery. Actually, it was my second time, but not consecutive years. I put my name in 2000 for 2015 and 2017. Each time I got one ticket. So each year you put your name in, you get more and more and more tickets, but they have to be consecutive. If you miss a year, you start back over at one ticket. So I'm never going to get in on one ticket again. That's really unlikely. It'll probably take me 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to get back in. And every one of those years, I need to run a qualifying 100-miler and put my name back in. Every one of those years. And for me, doing any 100-miler is huge. Huge, huge, huge. It's a big deal to try to go back and do it. And there's more issues than that. It really makes my whole year revolve around that 100-miler. So this will be the first summer in about 10 years I probably will not do a triathlon because of Western States being in the summer. But even if I keep trying to qualify, it'll modify kind of how much training I can do for triathlons. I also do bike races and cyclocross races. And I may, it really is going to mess all that business up to some extent. Even trying to do other ultras, I'll have to keep designing my season around that qualifying 100. So it'll really kind of be disrupting for, again, 5, 6, 7 years possibly. So do I want to do that? Well, I think I do. I think the answer is I want to give it a shot. I've probably got one more reasonable chance to try it again because I am getting up there in age. And I think I do. And I think it's more a matter of I will regret it if I don't try. Because I know I can do better. I know I can do way better than 30 miles. And the odds of the day being that bad again are obviously quite low. Could happen, but not that double whammy of horrible snow and mud and heat. Not likely to happen again. So this goes back to what went wrong. So here's my evaluation of what went wrong, and maybe some of this will be type of stuff you would recognize. Number one, I don't think I need more miles overall. I was running 60 plus miles per week. That's a lot for me. Any more than that, and I'm going to get hurt. So I don't think I need to do more. However, I need to improve on my technical running. And what I mean by that is again, the cramping I think was caused by all that fighting the mud and the snow. So I need to run more on that stuff. And we don't get a lot of snow in Ohio. I have run in snow a lot. I like it. Actually, to be honest, I was having fun up there running in the mud and the snow, but it just took too much energy for too many hours. And but I need to run it more. Anytime there's mud, I need to just go run in the mud. Even if Western States doesn't end up muddy again, just the energy it takes to run in mud is good practice. It'll be good muscle strengthening, to put it that way. I think. So I need to really go out of my way to run in mud. It's always stinks because then you got to wash your shoes and everything when you get home. But anytime there's mud, I need to just get out and run in it. Anytime there's snow, I need to get out and run in the snow. Just for strengthening my muscles. I need to run more on rocky trails. But this is a catch-22 because I have a really, really horrible left ankle. And if I run too much on rocky trails, I twist it so many times that then I can barely run at all, or I have to run on something smooth. So I really have to be careful with that. So maybe I need to come up with drills to do, running sideways, or just maybe set up some type of obstacle course and start just running, some crazy obstacle course to train my muscles on the sides of my legs and the insides of my legs and all those little muscles to work better. It might really help me. Number 2, I may have gotten a little bit too much out of my routine. We were in California for a whole month, and I tend to do a pretty decent amount of core work and a decent amount of stretching. And I know whatever you think of stretching, it doesn't really matter here. What I'm talking about is I do a decent amount, and that might help me keep from cramping, and I wasn't doing as much there. In part because I tend to do a lot at a gym here, and I wasn't a member of a gym there, and also we were traveling around a lot and all that. If I go back there again, and I'm there for a month before the race, I need to stay in that routine of doing core and stretching. It may or may not have made a difference, but and I did do some, but maybe I need to be really diligent about keeping the same amount. Here's another thing. Maybe I should have told more people to follow me, because that would have been more motivation. Oddly enough, I never once posted like on Facebook, hey, I'm running Western States, here's my number, here's how you can follow me, pay attention, blah, blah, blah. And that's not because I'm humble, it's because I'm kind of nervous. I don't want to point out something I do too much before I do it. Sometimes maybe if I'm confident, but obviously I wasn't confident. And now, I'm a braggart as much as anyone. Had I finished Western States, I would have announced it to the world. I would have taken out an ad in our local newspaper and said, look at me. Look what I did. I would have been all over the place about what a stud I was because I finished. It has nothing to do with that. But it's like I don't want to point out that I don't want people to see me fail. And that's kind of a character flaw. So maybe I had done that, it'd be a little more motivation. Having said that, I don't think that would have made any difference with the cramping. That would have just made a difference if I was, fighting to finish in the end. So, but maybe it's something I should do. Number 4, I should have got up and ran the first 30 miles. Well, easier said than done. There was pretty much no way to run the first 30 miles of that course. It was buried under snow. I would have not known where the trail was. I would have gotten lost and died. So unless I could have found someone, an expert, to take me up there. And even then, logistically, it'd be difficult because we'd have to make sure we could make it all the way to mile 30 for someone to come get me. So that's, that's the next place available for a human being to get to. Maybe, somehow we could have got up and ran part of it or something, but that was almost not possible to do. But at least now if I went back there, I would know what the first 30 is like. I don't know what all the trail is like because so much of it was under snow and mud, but I'd have a much better idea of what it's like. My left ankle, I've mentioned a couple times, it's really a lousy ankle. It doesn't bend at all, and it has no strength. Anytime I hit a rock, it's really, really, really painful, and I hit rocks over and over and over and over in races. So I need to strengthen it more. I do some exercises and a little bit, but I need to be more diligent about strengthening my left ankle and then, of course, both ankles. I need to do that a lot more so that I'm not fighting that ankle so much when I'm running. I maybe need to do more long runs. It may sound silly that I say I didn't. Usually I save my really long runs for races. I race a decent amount, at least like once a month. So I try to do some 50Ks before a race like this. And I did do a number of 50Ks and stuff like that. That, really helps to get out and get in a 8 hour run or something. But I was doing a lot of my runs on the weekends. I was breaking them up. So I'd run like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. I did that a lot in training for this. And I really, really like that. I will not stop doing that. I have my own personal reasons for liking that. But maybe only every maybe every third week at least, get out there and run for 5 straight hours. At least every third week, if not every other week. Do at least one of those just to get myself a little more used to being more than a few hours out there at once. Okay, so again, that breaking up has worked a lot, but maybe just a little bit more of the longer runs. Number 7, continue to build my strength in the uphills. I seem to do pretty well hiking uphill. And I think, and that's good because even though I may not be going super fast, it means I'm not wasting energy going uphill like some people are. Like I said, I was passing people going uphill at the end. So imagine, they're probably using a lot more energy than I was to get up those hills. So I need to work, build that strength even more. So I do hike with a weighted vest, but often I just hike a trail that has hills in it. I think I'd be better off just going right to the Stairmaster. And I did do that a couple of times, but I think next time I would, every single week, put my weight vest on, go to the Stairmaster, and just walk for 60 to 90 minutes. I think I did 2 or 3 60-minute sessions, but I think I should do every single week 60 to 90 minutes on the Stairmaster, and then maybe even follow that up with an hour run. And that would simulate the first part of Western States where you're hiking up and then running. So I think I might do more of that and just keep building that strength. Number 8, get in and out of the aid stations faster. I must have said this to myself a million times before the race. Hey, I'm going to get in and out in 1 minute or 2 minutes because there's 23 aid stations. You cannot sit there and lollygag at the aid stations. You just can't do that. And yet I did kind of do it. I think I spent, it's hard to know now, but a few minutes at the first one, maybe another 4 or 5 minutes at the second one, and the third one, I bet I was there for well over 5 minutes, 7, 8 minutes. I don't know. And I only missed the next cutoff by 7 minutes. So obviously, had I just shortened the aid stations breaks, I would have made it. But it's weird because I can tell myself that, but then when I'm in a race and I get to an aid station, I'm so happy that I kind of accidentally take too much time. So maybe that's something I need to actually practice. Maybe I could set up a little aid station at my car or something and run loops to my car and just actually practice getting in and out fast just to make it a habit. I think one problem is when I do like a 50K, I'm usually not in any worry of missing the cutoff, and I want to enjoy it. So I will come into aid stations and I purposely just stand there and take it easy and chit chat and then leave again, which is fine, right? But if that is getting me to a habit of doing that, then it's not. So maybe now, even in 50Ks and 50 milers, I need to tell myself, as much as I'd like to just take it easy in the aid station, let's practice getting in and out instantly. And I think maybe that would help. I also, number 9, the last thing is I did a lot of, I usually bike once or twice a week. In the winter, I'll just do a spin bike type of thing. And I really stopped doing that once I got picked in the lottery. And I think I should keep that up. Maybe do one less run. I started running even more than normal, which is fine. But maybe do one less run, one less 5-mile run and do a bike ride instead. That might, just to keep that a little bit less pounding on the legs. I think that might have been a good idea. So one last thing I wanted to bring up is I took a lot of pictures while I was running, and I will post those because I didn't have pictures of the first 30 miles. I had a ton from the last 70. And yes, I probably wasted 7 minutes doing that. And you could say, well, that was dumb. However, I don't really regret that. That is part of my plan because I need to take it easy. So part of my plan is to purposely take pictures, and that forces me to slow down. And usually it doesn't take much time. I'm walking anyway, so I just pull the phone out, get it ready, and then I kind of stop for 3 seconds, and take the picture. So it's not a big deal normally. But I took a lot of pictures, and it may have added up to 7 minutes or close to it. And so you can say, well, that was dumb. But the good thing is, if I do the race again, I wouldn't need to do that. And like I said, I don't really regret it because all those times I slow down and take it easy like that, I think is good for me. It just means that when I do move, I should be able to move a little better. It keeps the heart rate down. So generally, it's a good practice, I think, to have the camera and snap a few pictures. And I can't be doing a race where I'm fighting the cutoffs anyway. If that's what kept me from, if that made me miss the cutoff, then I had bigger problems than taking pictures. Okay, cramping was a much bigger problem than taking the pictures. So I'll finish with a last thing, kind of a silver lining to this. Okay, the race course was ridiculous. It was hard. It was full of snow and mud. Very, very difficult. Also, I wasted time at aid stations. Also, I wasted some time taking pictures. And I still only missed the cutoff by 7 minutes. So even with those things, and on top of that, the cramping was ridiculous. Okay? So the cramping was horrendous. Everything, the cramping was really bad. I did those other things. Bad course, bad cramping, taking pictures, aid stations, and I still only missed by 7 minutes. Only 7 minutes. So, again, if I just do the aid stations a little faster, don't take as many pictures, the course is in better shape, and it can't be much worse, and I don't cramp, I'm going to be way ahead of that first cutoff. I mean, I know I am. All right, so, that's kind of the silver lining to all this. One last important thing I would like to mention is something my daughter did. She came all the way out to California to watch me, her and her boyfriend, and every summer we do a vacation, and this was going to be our summer vacation this year. So my wife and I went out separately much earlier, and she and her boyfriend came out, and they went around California a little bit, and then about a week before the race, they were there at the race, and we did some vacationing before the race. And my daughter doesn't see me run very often. Only a few times has she been at any races. So it was a big deal for me, and I really, really, really wanted to make her proud of me. It's a big, big, big deal. And you can imagine how I felt coming in not even 1/3 done with the race and my race being over. It was not a good moment as far as that goes. I'm not going to say I felt like I let her down. I mean, I understand that that's kind of the wrong language, but I also kind of feel like, well, I didn't do anything astounding to really make her proud of me. So at the finish line, when we went back to the finish line to watch Ryan Sands come in for the victory, there was this big whiteboard thing that people could write on. And I wrote something like, "Thank you, volunteers," on the board, and people writing little inspirational messages to their family and this and that and that and this. Well, it turns out my daughter wrote on here, without me knowing about it, "For the best dad," and in a little heart she wrote number 312, which was my race number, and she posted a picture of it and put it on Facebook. And you can only imagine how that made me feel. Absolutely fantastic. And, that little gesture from her really helped with the pity party and everything else, just knowing my daughter would do that. I mean, it's such a tiny thing, I guess, but it was a very, 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 very big deal to me, and very good timing on her part to do that. And I don't know, just one more reason. She's a wonderful, wonderful daughter. So that was a very big, big deal for me that she did that. Okay, that's it. That's the end of talking about Western States. Believe it or not, I may have another episode where I talk about all the running I did when I was in California, the non-Western States running, because we were there for a full month. So there may be one more little episode related to Western States. And then finally I will be done, because I've brought up Western States now for 9 straight episodes. The first 9. There will be another one, I guess I'll bring it up. And then, hey, some episodes where I'm not talking about Western States. So part 2 of this, and we're already an hour and 15 minutes. I know I talk too much. This won't take too long. I did want to bring up my nephew-in-law, Kurt Slattery. So I want a huge shout out to this guy. I call him my nephew-in-law because it's my sister's husband's nephew. All right, so through that marriage, he's kind of my nephew. He's 27 years old, a golfer from Illinois, near the Quad Cities where I grew up and where all my family still is. And I see him every Thanksgiving and every Christmas because we have a gathering. I always see him there. He's a great kid, and he is pursuing his dream to be a pro golfer. And he's an assistant pro living in Arizona right now, and been working his tail off since he was a kid to be a pro golfer. And he had something happen in, I can't remember now if this was in June or July. Must have been in June while I was in California. He had something happen which was absolutely amazing, in that there's a hometown golfing PGA tournament called the John Deere Classic. It's in the Quad Cities where we grew up, and it's a PGA tournament, and he's always wanted to do it because it's his hometown tournament. It's a big deal. I mean, the real pros all go do this a tournament. And so he needed I don't know a lot about golf, okay, but I know you have to, of course, qualify to get in or be invited. Well, he was trying to play his way in through another tournament. So they had a tournament right before the John Deere Classic. I'm assuming at the same course. I'm not even positive about that, but it was like just a few days before. And I don't know if it was either just the winner or the top so many would get into the John Deere Classic. So he's trying to play his way into the John Deere Classic. On the 18th hole of this tournament, he shoots an eagle. And by shooting an eagle, he got himself into a playoff with like 5 other golfers. On the first hole of the playoff, eagle. He eagles again. 2 eagles in a row, wins the playoff. It was bananas. I'm telling you, it was bananas. This is how bananas it was. It was ESPN's play of the day. The play of the day. It was showed over and over and over, these eagles that he shot by probably one of his relatives on their phone, just screaming because he shoots 2 eagles in a row. Then there was an interview. Someone interviewed him. The local news station interviewed him, and it's really emotional. He's like in tears talking about how as a kid, he always wanted to be in this tournament. And not only was it play of the day, but every single sporting and especially golf outlet showed these shots and this interview over and over and over for the next couple of days. Unbelievable. So if you've never had anybody famous ever in your family, and we pretty much never have, I mean, this is the most famous thing to ever happen to anyone. It was astounding. It was so cool. We were all so happy for Kurt. And, it was amazing. And he did get into the tournament, of course, and he did not make the cut in the tournament. He played the first 2 days and missed, not by a lot. He didn't have a horrible day, but he did miss the cut. But, and I'll try to post a link to that interview and such. It was really cool. So congratulations, Kurt. You're our hero for doing this. But on top of that, I thought I would interview him. So I just did a interview over Facebook Messenger, not live or anything. Because one other thing I'm interested in is taking people in 2 different sports and trying to find some overlap here. So as I go through these questions and answers, it's pretty interesting. Try to see how well they work with an endurance sport. Okay, a lot of his answers almost sounds like the same answer you might give if you were an endurance athlete. So here we go. So I asked him, you do have to have some endurance just to be out there that long, day after day. Do you build that endurance just by going out to golf, just by practicing, or do you do any other training than golfing, like weightlifting or anything? He said, I do all of it. I lift, I run, I practice a lot. Being in top physical shape means a lot to me. So I spend a lot of time in the gym. I usually run about 3 miles a few times per week to work endurance. It's vital for when I walk in the hot weather. I said, that's really interesting. Just out of curiosity, as a fun fact, what's the most holes you have shot in a day? And do you know how long it took you? And he said he's pretty sure he once did 54 holes walking in a day, and it took him 14 hours roughly, which is pretty neat, right? It's kind of like the time we might take to run 50 miles or to do an Ironman or something like that. Pretty cool. I said, do you worry about nutrition? And he said, well, I just generally eat healthy for the most part, have the occasional pizza and beer. How many of you out there can say the same thing? I said, what about the day of a tournament? Do you eat anything special? He said, I just keep it pretty much the same. I always have fruit and nuts around during a round. I drink a lot of fluids, especially water or Gatorade. And I said, well, that sounds reasonable. And he said, well, it's all about keeping it simple. That's exactly what I try to do. And I responded, runners say that too. It might seem like running is simple, but people can try to complicate their training and racing. And then I said, what about when you're having a lousy day? How do you handle it? And he said, breathing in through the nose and into the stomach and out through the mouth. Occasionally you need a little fire up your ass too. That's a very interesting answer. I really thought he was going to say something like, well, I square my shoulders, I grip the club like this, I get a new ball, I don't know, my feet got to be like this or something or other like that. And he goes, no, just breathing, and like he said, keeping it simple. So I think that can apply to a lot of us endurance athletes. Sometimes we need to be out there and things aren't going right. Hey, just relax and breathe. Relax and breathe. And sometimes we too are having a pity party, right? We need a little fire up our ass when we're coming in and things aren't going well and we're moaning and whining and we just need someone to kick us. So same type of response that we could give. And I said that. I said, runner might give the same response. I said, often with us though, it's the pain in our legs or lack of energy that's dragging us down. And he said, his response was, well, mentality, as you know, is everything. And I said, that's true, it is. So then I finally asked him, okay, this may be not as fun of a question. And I explained to him what happened to me with Western States, that I did have to qualify to get in. I had to run 100 miles to get in. That was kind of like him qualifying to get in with those 2 Eagles. And then I said at Western States, things didn't go well. I was out at 30 miles, and I said, that's kind of like you, Kurt, not making the cutoff. Now, granted, Kurt's at a completely different level than I am. I totally recognize that. All right, I'm an amateur, back of the packer. He is a legit pro. All right. And so I said, what's been going through your mind through that and all that? Are you mad at yourself, or are you just kind of happy you got there? He said, well, it's a mixture of both, but I took some positives from it and then also said I needed to work on things. But for each thing I needed to work on, I knew I was going to get closer to my goal of being on the PGA Tour. So while I'm encouraged, while I'm working on my weaknesses, I know that I stood toe-to-toe with those guys and played well for certain stretches. But I needed to clean up a little bit around the greens. If I clean up around the greens, then I will make the PGA Tour. It's about working on weaknesses and being encouraged about it, not discouraged. And I think if we replace, cleaning up around the greens with some of the things I listed, like getting in and out of aid stations faster, working more on my ankles, working more on my stabilizer muscles, this type of thing, we could have said that exact same paragraph he said. So that's it. I just thought that was really neat about how common ground between us and a golfer. I mean, who would have thunk it? At first glance, the only thing similar between the both of us is we're both outside, not a whole lot else. So again, congrats to Kurt Slattery. I think he does have a Facebook page if anybody wants to follow him, Kurt, Kurt Slattery. And with that attitude, and he's only 27, that is still young, I really, really think he can be on the PGA Tour. That would be really, really, really cool. So that's it. This is an hour and 25 minutes. I apologize, but that's the way it tends to work with me. That's it. So as always, if you have any comments, questions, anything, send them to my email, kemsmith1@gmail.com. If you did not get that, it's on runsmith.net, along with a bunch of other information, including my coaching services. If you can, please leave a rating or a review on iTunes. So far, one person has done that, and that's because she's married to me. No one else has done it. Or you could donate at patreon.com/runsmith. Hey, you could be the very first person to ever donate. Or you could sign up for coaching and then just say you don't need coaching. be a donation. Kind of weird, but I guess you could. Or you could just sign up for coaching and get some coaching. Anyway, that's it. So this is Run Smith Enterprises presenting Topics in Endurance Sports, signing out. Have a fun workout.